a young woman, only 19 years old, was walking toward what would later be called one of the most ill-fated altars in Russian history. No one knew it, but the poison running through her veins, according to rumors, would extinguish her life in just 15 days. How could Marfa Sobakina have guessed that a simple mixture, given by her mother with an innocent intention to boost fertility, would actually turn her wedding night into a death sentence? Before we begin these dark stories full of pain and secrets hidden throughout history, if you have a passion for curiosity and discovery, liking and subscribing makes it possible for us to uncover the cold secrets of the past together. Sharing where you're listening from in the comments allows us to connect on this timeless journey. Her journey, beginning as the Tsar's third wife, reportedly transformed into one of the bloodiest waves of revenge in Moscow's history, whispered through court gossip. Ivan IV, the monarch history deemed the Terrible, believed that the woman he loved had been sacrificed due to a mother's misguided affection. The whispered letters spoke of silent weapons concealed behind curtains, of powders and potions that promised healing but carried an invisible death. Within a short time, 20 people paid the price with their lives. According to rumors, one noble was executed in full view of the public in Red Square. Whether all the details are true is unknown, but what is certain is this: the sudden death of the young Tsarina took the paranoia of the ruler, already feared for his cruelty, to a whole new level. Foreign envoys and chroniclers recording the events mention mercury, used at the time to treat syphilis and to facilitate pregnancy, as the invisible protagonist of this tragedy. That bridal chamber in 1571 became synonymous not only with the death of a young woman, but also with the birth of a tyrant who would plunge Russia into an empire of suspicion and fear. These 15 days, it is said, contained more betrayal, pain, and consequence than decades of war. This was a story imperial physicians tried to hide, concealed in records for 4 centuries. A mother's well-intentioned gift had turned into the death knell of an empire. And now, let us return to the year the stage was set. The calendar read 1571. Throughout Russia, the Tsar's secret police and punitive raids sowed terror. Ivan, 41 years old, was desperately seeking an heir to continue his dynasty. Only 2 years had passed since the suspicious death of his second wife, Maria Temryukovna. The Tsar, lacking a male heir, initiated a process that would go down in history as Moscow's Great Bride Selection. Envoys were dispatched from the icy forests of the north to the plains beyond the Volga. Over 2,000 young girls were summoned to Alexandrovskaya Sloboda, 100 kilometers outside Moscow. This somber fortress, surrounded by wooden palisades and topped with onion domes, was not merely a selection center, but the headquarters of the Tsar's dreaded guards. Executions held daily in the square served as a reminder to the young women present that the ruler's favor could be as lethal as his wrath. The selection was conducted according to the strict rules of an ancient tradition inherited from Byzantine emperors. Each candidate was scrutinized down to the finest detail by the physicians of the time. With the meticulousness of detectives, these young women's purity, fertility, and health were reported individually. Next came the heavens. Astrologers followed the lines of the stars, searching for signs of harmony or disaster between the Tsar and his potential consorts. As days passed, the crowd narrowed. From 2,000 young girls, first 24 and then only 12 remained. This process was more than just a marriage selection. Foreign envoys, especially the Venetians, watched anxiously. Coded letters from Moscow spoke of a Tsar who was sometimes withdrawn, sometimes shaking the court with outbursts of rage. For them, this marriage was not a mere court ceremony, but a decision that would affect the balance of power between East and West. The right choice of wife could soothe Ivan's tempestuous spirit and secure the future of the throne. The wrong choice would lead Russia, already rocked by turmoil, into further instability. And on June 26, 1571, the decision was announced. Marfa Sobakina, the daughter of a wealthy merchant from Novgorod, was declared the winner of this great contest. Sources from the time described her as a young woman who was both elegant and self-assured, combining innocence with intelligence. She seemed a perfect match for a ruler seeking solace amidst grief and loneliness. However, the joy was short-lived. As the days passed, ominous whispers circulated through the palace. Marfa's face was paling, her body growing weak. While the ceremony preparations proceeded rapidly, the young bride grew increasingly frail. Physicians found no remedy. Herbs and prayers were useless. Some thought the intense ceremonial duties had worn her out. Others spoke of a rival's witchcraft or a secret poison. Later generations, reading between the lines of correspondence, pointed to another possibility, an elixir prepared by her mother. This mixture, hoped to boost fertility on the wedding night, contained mercury, used medicinally at the time, but in high doses, it rotted the body from the inside. Was it truth or legend? It is unknown, but this tragedy fueled the imaginations of historians and novelists, becoming part of the narratives of Ivan's reign. Thus, Marfa Sobakina entered Russian history as both a bride and a mystery. Her brief journey from selection to death remained one of the most enigmatic riddles in court history. At just 19, she carried a radiance that historians described as both divine and dangerous. With hair that shone like gold and eyes as deep as northern lakes, she gave the impression that she would bring peace to a turbulent empire. But facing her was a ruler infamous for his fits of rage, a man who instilled fear with his cruelty, Ivan Vasilyevich. At 41, he had buried 2 wives and 2 sons, with rumors of betrayal and conspiracy constantly surrounding him. He was striking with his great height and imposing figure, but within his soul, storms of fear, superstition, and distrust raged. To hold on to power, he had established a rule that intimidated the nobility, turning executions into a spectacle to display his godlike power over life and death. Every loss grew like a gnawing hunger within Ivan. The search for an heir to secure the throne's future had now enslaved his entire mind and soul. Every marriage became a bet on the dynasty's destiny, not just a choice of spouse. In Ivan's eyes, Marfa was not merely a symbol of beauty or peace. Envoys whispered that she represented his last hope for the possibility of bearing an unshakable heir. But as embroidered caftans and ceremonial crowns were prepared in the palace, another invisible and irreversible hand was tying a dark knot in the fabric of fate. In Novgorod, Marfa's mother frantically turned to ancient folk remedies for her daughter's health and fertility. The rumors claimed the elixir she prepared with trembling hands contained mercury. This substance, praised by village healers, could enhance fertility in the right dose, but too much was as certain as death. Her mother did not know that the little vial she gave her daughter was preparing not the salvation of the dynasty, but the death of her beloved child. In modern eyes, this act seems not brave, but reckless. But the 16th century mind viewed it as a scientific advancement, a valuable substance restoring balance to the body. Yet, by the time the confession came to light, the gallows had already taken the innocent. Some captives were released after brutal whippings. Others were buried forever in the dungeons of the Kremlin. Once Ivan's rage was ignited, it rarely subsided. Centuries later, historians tried to separate fact from myth. In 2009, forensic anthropologist Tsarina examined remains thought to belong to Marfa Sobakina. Tests revealed traces of mercury in the bones. This supported, though not definitively proved, the chronicler's story of the deadly folk remedy. A facial reconstruction from the same study showed the striking delicacy and graceful, yet noble, features of a young woman. The contrast between this peaceful image and her tragic fate deepened the anguish of the event. Marfa's short life influenced not only historians but also artists. Story was featured in Rimsky-Korsakov's opera The Tsar's Bride and Lev May's drama of the same name, enveloped in music and poetry. Thus, the pain lived on longer than in archives and chronicles. However, beneath this cultural legend lay a darker legacy. Ivan's grief drove him to paranoia, transforming into a terrifying force that shaped an empire. Historians suggest that the atrocities following Marfa's death are linked to the Tsar's later brutal actions. The leveling of cities, the tearing apart of noble families, and the pervasive fear in Muscovy are all seen as the result of the atmosphere created by this tragedy. The event seemed to confirm for Ivan that betrayal could be hidden even behind the closest walls, and that poison could be mixed even into a drink meant to bless the dynasty. From that winter onward, Ivan tightened his grip on both his subjects and his advisors. The stage was set for years of suspicion and bloodshed. All this catastrophe, according to rumors, was rooted in a single, misguided act of love, the silently unveiled destruction caused by a remedy a mother applied to secure her daughter's happiness. When a small amount of mercury was whispered about in both village huts and palace chambers, it became, by the laws of the time, the quietest weapon in history. And questions remain. What secrets are still hidden in the sealed corners of royal homes? How many queens, princesses, or brides died due to treatments promising vitality or fertility? Alongside every recorded tragedy, there are countless stories buried without witness. Imagine for a moment the desperation Marfa's mother must have felt had she realized whether her gift brought a curse or a blessing. The Tsar's court, paralyzed between loyalty and fear. Friends were suspect, and the treatments of physicians became evidence of treason. This story reminds us that behind the magnificent crowns, dangers as lethal as any battlefield lay hidden. The documents reveal only a small fragment of the secret history of royal medicine. They hint at dynasties whose course was altered by powders, herbs, and mixtures intended to heal but capable of ending a line. If the tragedy of Marfa Sobakina whets your appetite for the next discovery from the shadows of European courts, subscribe and turn on the bell icon so you're the first to know when new research is published. Share this story with anyone interested in the concealed scandals that shaped nations. And write to us below, which detail affected you the most? The possibility of a mother's accidental poisoning, the terrifying executions, or the idea that a simple fertility elixir could doom an empire. In future episodes, we will explore more mysteries of royal bedrooms, queens whose illnesses concealed darker truths, and medical traditions that decided who would rule and who would vanish. As tragic as Marfa's fate was, it forms only the first chapter in the long chronicle of dangers behind the palace gates. The next investigation promises far more startling discoveries. We will continue to reveal how crowns, love, death, and destinies were once decided.